There we are. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Safe Space. I have been gone for a while, but now we are back. I'm going to wipe my face because I am having hot flashes. So- See, okay, so we're all
We're good. Yeah.
okay. I'm going to start with my introduction. Safe Space is a conversational panel that is intended to be free of judgment, free of harassment, and free of emotional harm. We ask that you keep an open mind, be receptive to different perspectives, and be uncomfortable. But today on Safe Space, I have special guests. Last week, I attended Teacher Air Camp. And I have now with me some other co-teacher participants who were also a part of that wonderful program. It was awesome. And so our conversations today will be about the experience that we had with Teacher Air Camp. So we're going to start from left to right. So we're going to start with Jennifer, Yolanda, and then Lisa. Jennifer, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Jennifer Terry, and I am out of Louisville, Kentucky. I currently am teaching 7th grade math. I'm certified math and science 5 through 8, and I just finished up my 25th year of teaching. So, yeah, did you want to know my favorite quote?
Yes, you have a favorite quote or favorite word?
So my favorite quote actually is, I've used this now and it's on my wall in my classroom and I've used it for several years, but it's "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And it was from Gandhi. And I just think that so many people talk about the changes that they want to make, but they don't ever act on it. So that's always been my mantra.
Oh, love that. Yes, definitely. We have that quote stenciled on the wall of our first floor as you come into the building of our school. Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer, and welcome. Yolanda.
Hi, I'm Yolanda Simon, and I am presently in Little Elm, teaching Little Elm. I live in Frisco, but I'm originally from Louisiana. So I'm in Texas. I went from hot to hotter. I've been at Little Elm High School for 6 years. But I just completed my 20th year as a teacher, and I teach earth and space science, and I've been teaching aquatics as well, aquatic science. But this year I'm also going to be doing chemistry. So I teach high school, and I have taught high school the whole 20 years. And so I don't have a favorite quote. I do have a favorite scripture. Yes. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. Yes. But I did get a quote from Orville Wright that I liked, and it goes along with one of my favorite activities we did. And his quote was, "Learning the secret of flight from a bird was a good deal like learning the secret of magic from a magician."
Oh, okay. So I wasn't expecting that, Yolanda. Thank you very much. Thank you. And last but not least, we have Lisa Love.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Love. I live in Yuma, Arizona. If you don't know where Yuma is, I'm right down on the Mexican border, right in the corner. So there's California, there's Mexico. I'm right there in Arizona. So it's very hot, but we're used to that. So yes, we have had 118 several times already this summer, but that happens for us. It doesn't mean I like it. It just means I know it's coming. So I love living down here. I'm not from here, but it's definitely a good place. It's grown on me. I am a kindergarten teacher, and I'm only a second year teacher. I'm a second career teacher, so I'm older but new. And it's quite an interesting experience to have a lot of life experience, but be a new teacher. And I feel like I can bring a lot of experience to my teaching. And I love 5-year-olds. They are probably the most perfect people on the planet. And I loved working with them this last school year, doing remote with 5-year-olds. Sounds like it would be awful, but it actually was a wonderful experience. As wonderful as it could be, I guess. So it was good. Let's see. I have so many favorite quotes. It's so hard. But I think for this, I really love a quote by Walt Disney. I have to read it word for word, but it said, we keep moving forward, opening up new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. And I love to inspire curiosity in my students because I believe that's what leads us to think out of the box and do things out of the box and be brave about being ourselves. And that's what I love to inspire. And that's what I felt like Air Camp taught us.
Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you for that quote. Ladies, those were such wonderful quotes, something to take back and actually think back and just reflect on. And curiosity, yeah, it does. Curiosity leads us down a number of paths. It was definitely curiosity that led me to apply for the teacher air camp. I knew nothing about this camp, and so I'm just scrolling through like, okay, what am I going to do for PD this summer? I'm one of those teachers that during the summer, as soon as summer break hits, it's like, okay, professional development. I need to take a break and say, you know what, I'm stepping back from the classroom, but it's like, okay, I'm free to do professional development. And I don't know about you ladies, but during a year when I go to a PD, I feel like I don't have enough time to actually sit and digest and understand the professional development. It's like I have the professional development. Now I'm automatically back into the classroom to my routine. Whereas during the summer, when I have a professional development, I have time to understand what I'm doing, think about different creative ways I can apply what I've learned. So that's why I definitely love professional development during the summertime, because I can just take my time about understanding what I've learned and how I can actually apply it. So that's one of the good things I like about summer development.
I agree.
Yeah, because it's just so much. I'm like, okay, I got to get back to my lesson. So that's just one issue that I have. Air Camp takes place in the National Aviation Heritage Area, a region of national historical importance. Air Camp is a partner of the National Aviation Heritage Alliance, the congressionally designed management entity of the National Aviation Heritage Area. And we were in the Dayton, Ohio area. And what I found, I learned so much from this camp. And I'm sad to say that as an educator, I was not privy to any of this information. I didn't really think to research it either. Dayton, Ohio is the birthplace of aviation. I did not know that. They have a lot of activities. We attended the National Aviation Museum, and we learned about the Wright brothers. So there was so much rich history about flight and learning about the Wright brothers, who invented the man-powered air flight, and they experimented with early airplanes at Huffman Prairies. Okay. Now, today, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is a hub of innovation for aviation and aeronautics as the home for the Air Force Research Laboratory. So I don't know if you ladies knew this information prior to attending the air camp, because I didn't know that.
I just knew that's where the Wright brothers were from, but I did not know any of the other stuff. I was just like you. I kind of went in blind.
Yeah. I wasn't familiar with all the information around it, but I'm very appreciative that they took that pathway and letting us see that part. Not even just Wilbur and Orville, but also seeing all the planes, being able to see, how different planes were developed, what they look like, so you could compare them. And So those are things that you do when you're teaching is you give kids, hey, let's compare, let's see what's the difference. So I think that that experience really was enhancing, in fact, to lead up to the climax of us being able to fly.
Yes.
But just being able to see where it started. And a lot of times kids want to see, where did this start? Like you're at the end or you're in the middle, but I want to know where it begins. And so I really appreciated them letting us go to the museum and see those things and go through the tours and even go back to where Wilbur and Orville were when they did, all their flights. And I think all of that was very important for us to really get the idea of what flight is.
Yes. And one thing I would like to point out, starting from the first day, usually when my experience with professional development, okay, the teachers, we all, they count off and you go to this group, okay, you 3 to 5, this is your strand, K to 2, 6 to 8, and then high schoolers. Okay, we're going to put you in a group. You're going to have nice discussions about whatever topic that they give you. You're going to sit there, you're going to plan, you're going to learn, and then we're going to come back together. This is what we're going to do. We're going to play some games. We're going to come back together. This was not that. This was so hands-on. The activities were so engaging. Starting with the first day, when we attended the Air Force Museum, and learning, for one, I did not know what the initials meant in front of the different fighter jets. Understanding how C stands is for cargo, B is for bombers, and I think C, was that for civilian? No, C is for cargo, bomber jets, and there was a few other initials in front of the jets that we learned about. And I just was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. It's just so much. I was like, I'm an educator. How did I not know this? So that was one of something that I was able to bring back.
Well, it shows you just how isolated our information is. And like with kids, it's the same thing. Like when they take a class, they isolate what they learn. So like I'm in science, so I just want to learn science.
Yes.
But it's like cross curriculum. Like history, you're going to learn some history in science. You're going to do some math in science. The kids are like, wait a minute, I'm in science class. But we're the same way. Like if you're used to just your topic or your area, we can be kind of focused just on that and not really look at the importance of knowing other areas to enhance our own curriculum.
That is so true. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lisa. Go ahead.
It just also shows that we are always students. That we can't know everything. We're going to learn something new all the time. And that is such a wonderful thing to be able to share with our students.
Yes, because I definitely learned so much and I enjoyed it. Was definitely a love for learning that was renewed in me. This whole program was definitely something new. One thing that also on the first day, and this is just the first day, the activities that we were working with, we learned about flight and how the different components of flight, performance, stability, control. We learned about pitch and roll access and yaw. And I was there, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about this. And I'm sitting there thinking, I was like, okay, do they know this already? Should I have completed some type of guide before I came here? Because I don't know any of this. So, and it put me back into a place that as educators, we forget that our students experience.
Absolutely.
We always tell our students, focus on what you know. And while I was sitting there, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I wonder how much do they know? Did they study this before they came here? I didn't have any information before I came. I knew I should have done some more research. And all of this is going through my head until I finally said, you know what? Be in the moment. Be receptive to everything that is being presented to you. And then that's when I really got comfortable and said, I'm going to go with the flow. If I don't know it, I'm going to ask questions, and I'm just going to be open to learning. I don't know. What do you guys, what was your experience the first day?
I loved after the first class, and I came out and I heard so many people saying the same exact thing. They were like, did you know about this? And is everybody just, so I loved the vast differences that we all brought. Do you know what I mean? Like, some of us are from more of a science background. Some, I can teach science, but I'm definitely more of a math background. But yet we were all kind of, in the same place, learning the same thing, and we were able to take different pieces from it. And the conversations that we had afterwards, I think, were just as meaningful, because maybe I didn't necessarily get the same perspective or the same insight. And then whenever you get to talk about it, and I think that's what's missing a lot in professional development, is that digesting with other, professionals and being able to really talk about what you learn, I think is so important.
Yes, definitely. And being able to tour the Air Force Museum, that was so interesting, looking at how the airplane started with the Wright brothers and the progress and the innovation that came about to what we have now, the speed, the different materials that was used in an airplane. Because looking at those airplanes and looking at how they were using fabric, I'm like, fabric for an airplane? What? No way. So I didn't know that. That was something I did not know. And now I'm thinking about different research projects that I'm going to have for my students. What type of materials, were used at the development of airplanes. And I know they're going to look at me like, Ms. Williams, it's metal. What do you mean? What type of material? And once they learn, like, oh my gosh, these are the different materials that they started making with airplanes. This is how they were making airplanes fly. So this is something that I will be able to actually take back to my students and actually because sometimes we can go to a professional development and we think to ourselves, I'm not using this in my classroom. How, what is this? I'm glad that I know this now, but how am I going to use this in my classroom? And that wasn't the case with Air Camp.
I thought that by learning in the museum, it was a really good example of how we can do cross curriculum. So there was history there. There was social studies there. There was science there. You could make ELA activities like doing a research project so easy. And didn't it just make it more interesting and exciting for us? It made us want to learn. And that is, without them saying to us, this is what you should do, they were showing us, this is how to teach your kids so that they'll be excited and interested, and they'll learn and remember, to make it more cross curriculum. And I really appreciated that about this training that we did. I felt like all of it was like that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I liked that it wasn't even really about the subject. I've taught physics. So I've seen these terms and I've seen these things, and it was a refresher for me. It's been about 3 years since I taught physics. But even with that, it was about the learning, like you said, like techniques and ways to draw your students into whatever it is. Doesn't matter what your content is. We went to the activity and we did the team building. I loved that activity because it allowed us, and it's something I want to do with my kids the first day, but it allowed me, I had to learn people's names. I'm like, okay, what's your...
So you rocked it too, girl. You didn't.
I was so scared, but I took the lead. It made me be that leader, step out, because, and that's sometimes you might see a student that needs that encouragement, and then them being successful will bring them out of their shyness or their place where, even though I don't know, I'm a little shy, but
no, I don't believe that, Yolanda. I refuse to believe that.
But so the things that they did was not just about science not just about flight, but really just getting across how to bring information to the kids and get them excited about it, and get them, participating, because we all participated in that activity. Like everybody was pulling, everybody was trying to get the ball to go one way or the other, but we were working as a team. And I thought that was just the awesome opportunity for us, and to get together, get to know each other.
Yes, definitely. Now, one activity that we learned, and this was the activity that was prior to us going to, I'm on SafeSpace. Antonio, he's like walking in.
His little face.
Okay, this is homegrown. This is grassroots podcasting. Okay. The activity where we had I think it was a Skittle, and we had the straw, and we had to balance the Skittle as we blew through the straw. And I was thinking about that activity, and I was like, okay, how can I use this activity in the classroom to keep it safe? And I know I was practicing, because when I first started, when I blew through the straw, I blew the Skittle off. It was just going across the class, across the stage. And I was like, okay, this is not going to work. I was like, you know what? Okay, this is just something to do. But then I kept at it. It was like a productive struggle. And then I blew through the straw again, and I was able to like make the Skittle like hover over the straw. And that's something now with my students. I'm like, okay, you're gonna, the first or second time that you try this, you're gonna blow the Skittle across. But when you keep at it, you learn how much force or how much thrust is needed to hold the object in place. And so now I'm thinking, okay, do I want to just go ahead with an activity with the students, or do I want to introduce them to the different terms? And so now with what we have learned, I'm thinking, you know what, I just want them to do the activity. And then after we've completed the activity, I'm going to go back and identify the different activities, and identify, okay, when we did the blowing of the straw, that was thrust, making sure that you're understanding, and the students will then like, oh, okay, now I have a better understanding of thrust, as opposed to just providing them, okay, this is the definition of thrust. So I want you to think about it. Now it's like, okay, now I know what happens. Now, how can we relate that to airplanes? What do you think is happening with an airplane or a jet when you're thinking about those terms?
I know for me, one of the things that I definitely want to try to work on in my classroom is, because I teach math. So there were times where I was trying to figure out how can I incorporate some of the things that we were doing in a math classroom, but really like there's math all over it. But like for me, angles just kept coming back and back. Angles. When I teach angles, we get out a protractor and it's drawn on a paper, and it's just looking at, there's really no substance to that, and there's no purpose from the kids' perspective. And so I really want to take this idea of, airplanes and flight, and how angles are such an integral part of that. So then that way it's giving them a reason to study angles, and why they're, how do you read angles? How are angles, how are your different things going to be affected by angles? So, I had to try to really think about things that I teach, and how can I just bring in this topic, maybe not as a whole, but like little parts, like the equation. We do equations that just don't mean anything. But there are flight equations. There are equations that all over the place, that using something that's, and then you can also talk about it and get kids interested and engaged. So
Jennifer, you can't forget to do the putt-putt. You can't forget
to do the golf.
That was the most ingenious angle activity, and you had fun. You had fun. You gotta do the putt-putt.
Yes, that was pretty. Also, I enjoyed I'm not sure of what we called the activity, but we were sliding down the slide, and the use of different material that determine our speed. That was another activity. I'm trying to think about how I can incorporate that into my classroom, because I know the students will definitely love that, because I'm thinking about the slide that's on the playground. That's, it doesn't have the up and down, it's just the slide, but I'm thinking of a way that we will be able to use that, definitely.
And I loved that activity, and that we talked about the silk was probably the most aerodynamic and probably the one that was going to cause you to go down the fastest, but sometimes it was a little out of control. And especially when we would have somebody push at the top, like it was just like out of control. So we talked about how sometimes you have to look at what's going to give you that stability. Not just the fast and the most force. You got to also have other variables too that you have to keep in mind. So I thought that was really very eye-opening too.
And that's also with students, because most of the time students, they just want that speed and, like you say, the force. But now they're understanding, wait a minute, we're going too fast, so we're going to have to slow down because this is not safe. So now you're understanding why cars and for this particular airplanes have to use a certain speed, because if that speed is beyond certain capacity, it can be very dangerous.
Right.
So that's something also that's very important that you have to understand, because on that silk, you took off with that. It made me think about the one Christmas classic where he at the bottom and he jets through on the slide. And I'm like, okay, we don't want that issue.
I think that activity is great too with all of our students. Just the process of our students figuring it out is going to be really exciting to watch, and try not to step in and say, oh, you should use this, but let them figure it out together. And because I teach kindergarten, that's going to be really interesting. I've already thought of some things I can do with the slide out on our kindergarten playground, and trying to let them have some independence in it, but scale it down a little bit for them. But I'm really excited to incorporate that.
Yes, because it seems like kindergartners, they are so open to being creative. They have no fear whatsoever.
They don't. They believe they can do anything, and it's great.
Yes, and I love it. I do. I don't know what happens between kindergarten and fourth grade, where now they become self-conscious and looking and just wondering, like, their self-esteem drops. But yes, kindergarten, they are definitely our brave bunch.
They sure are. I'm gonna have fun with them.
Yes.
Well, I think especially in high school, you're talking about fourth grade. I get them way in high school.
Oh, yes.
Where what the peers think is really big deal. What is my girlfriend gonna think that's in the class with me? And so it's so many dynamics. But I think if I implement things that are gonna be fun, once they realize it's fun, because when we first got the activity, some of us were kind of standoffish, they weren't sure we wanted to participate. But once you start seeing someone else doing it and participating and having fun, then it's like, okay, well, I could have fun too. So I think that using other students that will jump in and be that first person, the initiator, then you can bring some of those other students in to draw in. And I love the experimental design, which is basically where you pretty much give them the materials and say, hey, you design what your experiment is going to look like. For me, that is going to be very essential for my class with Earth and Space Science. We're not just talking about planes. We're talking about, shuttles, space shuttles. And so I like that was also in the flight in the museum, that they also included, NASA and all of that. So I think that kind of brings all of that.
You can't have one without the other, though. Education led to space exploration, so they go together.
Exactly. So I think that's what's going to be beneficial for me, is giving those kids that choice and saying, here, I'm going to give you, this is what I want. This is the final product. You decide how you're going to get there.
Yes.
Well, and I can't tell you how many times myself and others around me, we would learn something and then you would Google to figure out more. Like you would spark something, or you would want to learn more about it, especially the birds. Like when we were looking at those falcons.
Biomimicry.
Yes. I didn't know what that was.
No clue that was even a word.
And it made me think about how many things I teach my students, and I just teach, and I don't give them the opportunity to like ignite that passion or that curiosity you were talking about earlier, Lisa, about just giving them little nuggets and little things to do, and then there's a world of information that they can go out and find themselves, but you have to be the one to kind of spark that, So that was something I really gained a lot from this, is that idea of allowing them to have that curiosity and trying to figure out ways to interest them, to get them
without telling them what to do, letting them have that opportunity to figure it out and not hover, not be helicopter teachers, going along with aviation, but so we just let them be curious and let them figure it out.
See, I have a habit of that. I have a habit of, I want you to be creative exactly how I tell you.
Exactly.
I think we're all supposed to do that. We all do that.
Now you're going to be creative. We're going to do this on your own, exactly how I tell you to do it.
We're so good at that, aren't we?
Yes.
But now, I'm thinking of projects with biomimicry. Now, my students, I want you to go and research how nature has influenced innovation. Yeah. So now I want you to tell me different ways that we have used nature to come up with some absolutely innovative projects, innovative, we came up with the airplanes, the seashells. Yeah, the seashells help to come up with different ear horns. So, that's a project that, and I have no problems with letting my students know, I don't know everything. Mm-hmm. So when you are researching this project, you're going to teach me also. And students love that. They love the transparency of allowing students to know that we can't know everything. Because sometimes they don't like to go, it's the teacher. And so the teacher knows everything. And I am so transparent. I'm like, no, I don't. It's some things that you're going to have to teach me.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
And also I think it was our third day, we started learning about the drones. Oh, that. Oh my God.
Technology. I mean, who would have thought that? That was just amazing.
I had no clue about the drones, and it sticks in my head, but this is, the part where we like the raunchy stuff. When they talked about how drones were being used to drop drugs into prisons, I was like, I had no clue. I was like, it makes sense, to do that,
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense. But I was just like, oh, wow. And, everything that's going on with I had no clue. And, when I share this knowledge with my students, that's going to ignite them to, okay, so now I'm going to research drones. Mm-hmm. And offering them thought into, you play video games. That can actually be a career because, they're just playing video games to play video games. Mm-hmm. They don't actually realize that's the future of technology. That's how you're going to be controlling a drone. That's how you're going to write tickets for cars. There are some states that actually use drones to monitor the speeds on the highway and send you a ticket. So that's the downside of drones. So but that was
really about this was that we learned about it, but then we were able to do it.
Right.
The importance of, okay, I'm going to learn about it, but it's when we got to do it is when the excitement was there. When we actually got to do the drones and do our own code and all of that. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And but I had to do it. I said, I need to do this and learn how. Because how am I going to teach my kids if I didn't go through the process myself?
Yes.
And so when you go through the process, then you can see where the kids, they might struggle with this, or they might, you don't know till you do it yourself. And so that's what makes, when you're teaching and you've gone through the process, it makes it easier for you to teach and to say, okay, well, this might happen, but if it does, then this is what you can do, or give them an opportunity to figure it out themselves, but you be there to kind of, if you need a little help, I'm here, but I want you to figure it out. because I had to figure out, you know, it was really cool to be able to like code, and the drone would not do what we wanted it to do. It's like no, and then it crashed into everything, and we're like, oh my God. So, but it was really cool to be able to go through the experience. And I think that's what we have to remember with our kids. They have to go through the experience.
Yes, the productive struggle. That's definitely what they have to understand, the productive struggle. And also, what also came into play for me was now I'm able to better explain the design process for my students now that we went through all of this. So when I talk to them about, you know, what are the steps that we need in the design process, when we're now coding to make sure that the drone goes exactly where we want it to go, this is an opportunity for students to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. So we know that the drone has to go across. We know it has to go up. Then it has to go across again. We have to land it in this certain area. So these are the steps that we're going to. So now they're knowing that we have to plan this out. And when you give the competition component, that only makes it more sweeter for them, because now they're understanding that everyone has to do this. Everyone is making mistakes. And usually with groups, it's like, okay, well, you go over here, you're over there with your group, you go into this area. No one is seeing what the other is doing. But with us, when we were trying to fly the drones, everyone was in that space. So I felt comfortable, because then I was like, okay, well, everyone is struggling here. So it's okay to struggle.
I like that. Yeah. Me too.
And I don't know what was going on, but that drone would not go. It kept hitting the parameter. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? When it's like we changed the code, and it was just, once we got it to go through the first loop, the second loop, we continued to hit the outside parameter. I was like, oh my gosh, once we got it through both of the loops, then it wouldn't land in the area that we wanted. And I noticed other groups were having the same issue. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is all the part of the design process. How many times did the Wright brothers make mistakes when they were coming up with flight?
And you can't give up. You just have to keep looking at what you did, what didn't work, and try something different or see what you need to tweak. And what I loved is that they had us working together. You know, we weren't doing it isolated, because that's, you know, it's harder to do that when you're isolated, right? And so I think that was so powerful too, for us to see that when we're doing that, even though it may, you know, putting those kids in groups and letting them work with each other is really critical, because that's how they're going to learn, right?
Yes, that is so important. And being able to collaborate and
talk through and
yes, exactly.
And celebrate.
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Yolanda.
Celebrate. We were celebrating.
Cheering for each other.
Mom celebrated with us. Like when our drone went through, we all jumped up like we were
yes. Every milestone was celebrated.
And even Tom, like the person who's supposed to be leading, he's like, yes. And I'm like, so even that part, like learning how to celebrate with our kids, like, oh my God, you did great. You did great, you know. And he was trying to help us troubleshoot. Well, maybe if you do this, you know, so I think that's important too. Like we help our kids learn how to troubleshoot and continue. Like you said, don't give up. Okay, that didn't work. Let's do something else. But then once they get it, just be like, oh man, this is awesome. You did that.
Well, and I saw that those leaders were, I mean, they were just leaders. You know what I mean? They were facilitators, and they weren't like, they didn't have all the answers either. Like he was just trying to like work with you as part of your team, instead of, you know, sometimes as teachers, I think we come in with all the answers for the kids and want to do it for them. And I think that was so good that they modeled that for us, to show us that you're supposed to just be there to facilitate and help them, but not to just give them all the answers. So I loved that about our group of facilitators.
Yes.
I think that was, for me, that was kind of the overall theme of air camp, starting with the Wright brothers going to Huffleman Prairie. Did I say it right? Huffleman?
Yeah.
Just being there and knowing that that's a place where I just thought, if this field could talk, what would it tell us? And it would tell us about crashes and tears and cheers and things that worked and things that didn't. And I think that just set the tone for the whole thing. That's how we even have flight in the first place, is because some people just didn't give up. And that's how we need to be with what we need to teach our students above everything else. Just you keep doing it. You keep trying. You don't give up. You cheer for the successes. You work through the failures. And I think that is the greatest lesson of aviation for us and what we can teach our students.
Lisa, I love that. And as we're just sitting here having this conversation, I'm thinking about, because I had said that teaching math, there's sometimes not very many opportunities to bring in that content. But I'm thinking about, like, in the beginning of the year, like, we always want to do some sort of team building, and we're not going to dive right into content. But what a great, like, little mini unit, like an aviation unit, to be able to do teamwork skills and the communication and all of that kind of thing, but have a theme to it. And then talk about that, so I love that. I may use that this year.
I'm definitely
yes.
I love it.
I know I have a quote on the wall in my classroom: mistakes are expected, mistakes are respected. So, I want students to know it's okay, because, you're not going to get it right on the first try. And there's no fun in that. Fun is in the process.
You learn every time. Learn something every time.
Yeah.
And
then on our third day, the simulators, the flight simulators, I think I crashed and burned.
Did that make you nervous about going
every time?
Right.
Every time.
I said, oh my gosh, I was like, I am never going to fly an airplane. I was not sure. I was there. I was like, okay, I got it. And there's like, you're going too fast. You're going. I was like, no, I got it.
Did you notice how many times they had us doing simulations? I think that was so important. How many times we try to, we do labs and kids do it one time and they're done. But to tell them, look, you got to keep doing it. Like, we kept doing it. And sometimes you were successful, sometimes you weren't, but they kept putting us in a simulation. They kept putting us in opportunities to practice before we did the climax. Yeah. And I think that it made us, maybe helped with the nervousness. Might have made you a little more nervous because you crashed every time. But I think, as far as I know, once I got up there, I wasn't as nervous about when he let go and let me go, because I was like, okay, I know how to fix it. I know, you knew some things. And so I think that was so important that we were doing that over and over again and got to see it over and over again.
That's so good. I love that.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a really good point. I was glad that we did it over and over again. I was scared the first simulation.
Because I said, oh my gosh, if I get into the airplane or into the jet, this is not my intended way to land. It's not how I'm planning on landing the plane.
Right.
I knew that we'd have pilots with us in the plane, that they weren't going to let us crash. I knew that. I wasn't prepared for, when we were actually flying, how much they would let us fly. That was pretty amazing.
That was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Sitting in the cockpit and that hell, and just holding on, and I was literally shaking, and it didn't help with my flight to Ohio. There was so much turbulence. It was interesting when everyone was boarding the plane, everyone's having their private conversations. The turbulence hit. When I tell you, you could hear a pin drop inside that airplane. And I'm just sitting there like, maybe air camp wasn't such a good idea. And then when I got into the jet engine plane, and I'm thinking about the turbulence on the flight there, and I'm like, now I want to be special. I want to be noted for something. I was like, God, I didn't want to be the first Black woman to die of
in your first flight.
I was like, this is not how I want to be remembered. And the air pockets, there's like, well, Ohio has the air. I was like, well, I don't want that much air.
There was a lot of turbulence when we were flying our planes. I was feeling a little sick. It was crazy.
Yes, but I was like, and my children, they laughed about, okay, Mom, you're a pilot. It's like, yes, I'm a pilot. I have my flight record.
I have flown.
There you go.
I have flown.
But, I don't know about y'all, but when my flight up there and my flight back was totally different. Like, you know how when you know stuff now and you get in the plane, you're like, oh, I know what this is.
Let me know if you need assistance.
I'm an expert now.
Okay, I can help you. Like, my flight is never gonna be the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And if one of those engines goes out, it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. It can still fly.
It's going to automatically fly itself. We got this. Okay.
Yep.
I went to teacher air camp. I can walk you through this.
Exactly.
And the computer is flying the plane. We know the computer does most of the work. So I'm all right.
Just, I want you to just keep calm. I'm going to stencil it in the plane for you. Keep calm. It's automated.
Didn't you appreciate it even more though too? Didn't you just feel so appreciative of everything that went into making your flight happen in the first place?
It really did. Now, you think about everything now and you don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This was definitely a wonderful experience, and it's so much that I'm going to think about and lesson plan, and just to make sure that I bring back to my classroom, because now going forward, any professional development, I have to be able to relate it back to my scholars, my students. I don't know what professional development that I'll be taking in the future, because Air Camp has definitely set the bar. Definitely.
Yes.
Great experience.
And being able to meet such wonderful ladies such as yourself, definitely a wonderful experience.
Definitely. And that is one of the reasons why I do professional development.
Yes, definitely, to meet so many different great people. Yes.
It gives me some excitement too to see other educators that are around the country. Sometimes we get in our little isolated bubble.
In our little bubble, yes, we're comfortable. This is who I know. This, I don't need to know anyone else. Or it was just wonderful meeting people from all across the country. This is a really great experience, definitely.
Yeah.
We have to make sure Air Camp continues. This was a great experience, definitely.
So great.
Exactly.
And so now we're bringing our conversation to an end. I want to thank you, ladies, for being a part of SafeSpace, Conversations on SafeSpace. Thank you for everyone who has tuned in. This has been a really great conversation. And at the end of every conversation, I always tell viewers and my guests, please take a moment and shine your light in the dark. Thank you for attending a Safe Space conversation.